This video contains disturbing content, violent content, jump scares, and sudden loud noises. Viewer discretion advised.
Creepypastas are essentially internet horror stories or myths passed around on forums and other sites to disturb and frighten readers and viewers. The name creepypasta comes from the word copypasta, an internet slang term for a block of text that gets copied and pasted over and over again from website to website. Creepypastas are sometimes supplemented with pictures, audio, or video footage related to the story, typically with gory, distorted, or otherwise shocking content.
We covered a few of these in our top 20 creepy urban game legends, and so these won't be covered again. However, these are our top 22 revamped non-gaming creepypastas.
God's Mouth. During a mountaineering adventure, a man and woman enter a mysterious cave labeled God's Mouth. Despite the warnings around the entrance, they explored the solitary cave. The man soon feels a strangely warm wall before losing grip of the woman's hand and allowing her to disappear further into the cave. He starts to call for her and look around, but before he knew it, he was alone and trapped, with nothing but four walls surrounding him. After a few hours, he begins to accept his inevitable fate. He sits down and feels the wall touch his back. He begins to cry as the torch slowly fades into darkness, and he sees a hand with painted red fingernails, and he watches as the God's Mouth devours its latest prey.
Mariana Mordegard Glesgorv. There was a video on YouTube named Mariana Mordegard Glesgorv. If you search for this, you will probably find nothing. The few times you will, you'll just see a 20-second video of a man staring at you, expressionless, then grinning for the last 2 seconds. This is actually only part of the video. The full video lasts 2 minutes, and was removed by YouTube after the 153 people who viewed it either slashed marks on their arms, gouged out their eyes, or committed suicide in various ways. The cryptic inscription they carved has not yet been deciphered. YouTube periodically put up the first 20 seconds of the video to quell suspicions so that people wouldn't go looking for the real thing and re-upload it. The video itself was only viewed by one YouTube staff member, who started screaming after about 45 seconds.
Mr. Widemouth. Mr. Widemouth is about a creepy entity of the same name, who is said to appear to children around the ages of 4 to 6. Mr. Widemouth does his best to lure the child he has chosen into a false sense of friendship. It's believed that he tries to get the child to commit suicide by telling them,
"If you pretend hard enough, there will be a trampoline under the window, and when you jump out, you bounce right back up like a feather."
Or,
"I want to teach you how to juggle. Here's what you'll need."
It's been reported that kids have been seen trying to juggle knives or attempt to jump from windows before they were stopped. He pesters children until they end up taking their own life, and it's rumored that he takes the children's souls after they are gone to do with whatever he pleases.
The Holders. The Holders is a series of creepypastas accounting for the possible ways of gathering different sets of magic items, up to 538, that would supposedly curse its owner forever and bring a dark, unspeakable fate to the world once put together. Nobody really knows if these objects are real, or if there are indeed a set number of objects that exist in our world that yearn for a reunion with their kin. Speculation runs rampant. Part of what makes the Holder's stories so enticing is the possibility any person could go into a special institution, ask to visit a Holder, and be forced to undergo a test of power to earn an object. The people who want to take part in the recovering adventures are called the Seekers. These Seekers have set out for three main reasons: to seek for power, to seek for reunion, or to seek for separation. Their goals are known to mutate and change them into villains and monsters, but we can only hope that one with a just heart prevails over these foes. The SCP Foundation. The SCP Foundation is an organization with a murky past. Various agencies from around the world operate to maintain human independence from extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional, and extra-universal threats. In the past, humankind has been at the whim of these bizarre artifacts and similar phenomena. But it's now reached a point in history where they can begin to control and obtain these defiances of natural law. D-class personnel recruited from death row inmates are apparently used for human testing in almost every aspect. The Foundation occasionally runs into other groups, such as the Global Occult Coalition and the Church of the Broken God. Items can be an object, place, person, animal, or even an occurrence. They are given an item such as SCP-XX and categorized. SCPs are grouped as being safe, elucid, or Keter, which are classifications that explain expected threat levels. The Foundation collects and protects the SCPs from getting into the hands of others. SCP-173 was the first SCP object written and served as the inspiration for the project. It's described to be a statue-like entity that cannot move while in direct eyesight and will kill by breaking the neck of a victim if not observed.
Squidward's suicide. An ex-Nickelodeon intern recalls the time that he witnessed a very different episode of SpongeBob, titled Squidward's Suicide, back in 2005. We're told that the producers of SpongeBob would sometimes put little Easter eggs into the episode as a bit of a joke before it was finalized. But this was no Easter egg, as they sat and watched the first run of the original episode of Fear of a Krabby Patty. In the episode's beginning, we see Squidward practicing for a clarinet concert, and later that night when he finishes his piece in front of the crowd, things start to get strange. The crowd, along with SpongeBob, had hyper-realistic eyes, and they were all booing Squidward very aggressively, and he looked genuinely afraid. The next scene is shown with Squidward sobbing on his bed, with absolute silence, and a faint laughter in the background, before cutting to a single frame of a dead, distorted child mangled up on the pavement, and then later on another of a girl who is also mangled in much the same way, cutting back and forth to these different horrific scenes and the sound of wind and screaming and crying. Eventually, at the end, a mysterious voice tells Squidward, "Do it." And then he shoots himself in the mouth with a gun. And the episode ends. Happy Appy. Happy Appy was originally a Nick Jr. television show, with its main star being an apple named Happy Appy, who taught children how to act and handle with certain injuries and criterias. The first couple of episodes seemed pretty normal and went well, until after the first two. Things started to get worse. Nickelodeon removed the show after only 8 episodes and removed all traces of the files. Happy Appy helped children when they got hurt. He was a clay apple held up by a rusty bent stick. but as the show went on, it got weirder and weirder. He developed a death stare and an evil smile. By the 8th episode, he wasn't even made of clay anymore. The show progressed to get even worse. 2001 reports state that the episode seemed to depict happenings of disasters and tragedies before it was suddenly and unexpectedly taken off the air without a single trace of its existence. Candle Cove. This one takes place like a blog post that talks about a very old kids' TV show, which was about pirates and had some controversy because the main villain being a skin-taking skeleton, and the horrific screaming episode, which had every character except the laughingstock ship screaming at the camera, while Janice cried, possibly having been through hours of it. As recollections of the show are traded back and forth, it becomes clear that beneath the show's cutesy and disarmingly low-budget appearance is something very dark and disturbing. And by the end, it's implied that the show is something much, much more sinister than a half-remembered childhood memory.
Cupcakes. Why, hello there, everybody. This is your favorite creature of chaos, the Draconiquist Discord, here to tell you about this particular creepypasta known amongst the community as My Little Pony Cupcakes. It is quite possibly the most notorious My Little Pony fanfic ever written. It depicts the character Pinkie Pie as a serial killer who drugs her friend Rainbow Dash, dragging her to a hidden cellar. Pinkie Pie appears wearing a dress made of pony skins, wings, horns, and cutie marks of her previous victims, and begins to brutally murder Rainbow Dash sadistically in order to get that special ingredient for cupcakes. The fanfic has caused a lot of fear in the brony community and has since went viral across the internet, creating lots of blog posts and alternate endings. On Equestria Daily, the authorship has been attributed as Sergeant Sprinkles.
Oh, you're here! Just in time! I just finished a fresh batch of cupcakes! Oh, but it looks like I'm missing a few. Oh well, you came just at the right time!
The Rake. The Rake is a creepypasta story featuring a humanoid creature that stalks and attacks people in a manner similar to Slender Man. The Rake is a weird creature who is said to stalk people in ordinary areas, like gardens and trees, but he will never attack unless provoked, but will stare and follow you around. Its facial features are somewhat similar to the infamous Slender Man, with 2 large eyes and a small mouth, which expands to 5 times its size provoked and attacking, revealing an army of small, bludgeoning teeth that have no escape, with no chance of ever getting out alive. According to the mythology, first-hand accounts of the Rake have been described as early as in the 12th century and documented for the first time in 1691. The story also alleges that strange events in the northeastern United States involving the creature led to brief local media interest in the summer of 2003, but most written accounts of the creature have been mysteriously destroyed. Slender Man. The Slender Man myth started on the Something Awful forums with a rather creepy black and white picture. It showed a playground at some institution with the ever-infamous Slender Man standing in the background. This myth's popularity continued to grow until a video game called Slender, The 8 Pages was made. The Slender Man possesses the abilities of teleportation, incredible strength, and wondrous stealth. He also seems to possess a unique interest in children. When the Slender Man is near, static is said to be heard. If you look at his blank, soulless face, he will teleport to you, and take you to purgatory. Here, he will stalk you for all eternity, or simply kill you off. Some forms of this myth even state that the Slender Man will skin and eat his victims. Slender Man is a mythical figure, often depicted as a tall, thin figure wearing a black suit and a blank face. According to the legend, he can stretch or shorten his arms at will and has tentacle-like appendages protruding from his back. Depending on the interpretation of the myth, the creature can cause memory loss, insomnia, paranoia, coughing fits, and video distortions.
Abandoned by Disney. Abandoned by Disney is about a man investigating a shut-down Disney attraction called Mowgli's Palace, located in Guanaqui in Bahamas. But what he finds there traumatizes him. When he arrives at Mowgli's Palace, everything appears to be normal. On the outside, it looks like any other old abandoned manor, rotting and overgrown. Upon entering the palace, things begin to get suspenseful. The hooks in the meat freezer were swaying back and forth, and the water was still running in the bathrooms. And in one resort room, the man assumed that he heard a quiet conversation between two people that ended in crying. Then, things took a turn for the worse when the man noticed a mascot-only room. But the odd thing about this room was, unlike all the other rooms in the palace, this one still had its lock on. Curious, the man unlatched the lock and entered. One door was labeled Character Prep 1, and inside were multiple Disney character costumes, and among these was a photo-negative Mickey Mouse costume lying in the middle of the floor. When he was about to leave the room, the unthinkable happened. The Mickey Mouse costume stood up and stared directly at the man, and it spoke to him, saying one sentence.
Hey, wanna see my head come off?
The demonic costume then pulled off its head and leaked blood from it. Yellow, chunky blood. The man turned to run and saw 3 words written above the doorway, reading,
Abandoned by God.
After that, he fled from the palace. SuicideMouse.avi. SuicideMouse.avi is a lost episode creepypasta and is widely seen as the forefather of the entire lost episode genre. This story is based off of an old, unseen Mickey Mouse episode. The video starts off with a saddened Mickey Mouse walking down a never-ending street while random piano keys are heard playing in the background. After some minutes of him walking, however, the video starts to become corrupted, with the keyboard being replaced with static. The video blacks out for a whole 4 minutes while a low gurgling sound becomes more and more audible, and the sound of a horrific female scream starts playing along with Mickey smirking. The buildings and sidewalks start warping and distorting in different directions, with the distorted screaming lasting a full 8 minutes before abruptly cutting off. A fragmented scene is shown with strange faces, and a man is heard saying, "Real suffering is not known," followed by a gunshot. Mickey Mouse's face is shown to supposedly signify the end of the video, with what sounds like a broken music box playing in the background.
The Ronald McDonald House. The Ronald McDonald House charity is supposed to provide housing for the families of sick children. Seems innocent, right? Well, there's another side to the charity. There's another type of Ronald McDonald House. Not many people know about it. There's one in most big cities. You won't find it by looking for it. It doesn't even have an address. It doesn't have a sign above the door, and it doesn't have windows. No, the only way you're gonna find it is if you're taken there. The real Ronald McDonald House is about the slaughter of kids, sadistic torturing, and the underground trade of the snuff film. It's also implied they grind kids up for the use of special ingredient in such meals such as the Big Mac. If you're taken there, there's no escape. You sealed your fate, and trust me, they take pleasure in driving you insane. Remember, They're always watching.
Gateway to the Mind. In 1893, a team of scientists theorized that a human without any of his five senses would be able to perceive the presence of God. They thought the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, we could contact God. The test was conducted on an elderly man who had nothing left to live for. They cut off all sensory nerve connections to his brain. 2 days later, the man claimed that he could hear his dead wife speaking to him. The scientists found this interesting, but they weren't convinced, until he began to name dead relatives of the scientist and their personal information. After a full week of having dead voices in his head, the man became distressed and on the verge of insanity. He began hurting himself, asking for sedatives so he could fall asleep to stop the voices. Sleeping worked for 3 days, until he began having severe night terrors and hearing the deceased in his dreams. 2 days later, the man could no longer form regular sentences and was classified as insane. He was tied to a table to prevent suicide and began crying. This kept up for 2 weeks. During one study session, the man turned his head and focused one eye on a scientist for the first time in the study, even though he was believed to be blind. He said, "I have spoken with God, and He has abandoned us." Then his vitals stopped, and he dropped dead. Jeff the Killer. Jeff was a boy that moved to a new home. The day he moved in, his mother invited him to a birthday party. When him and his brother Louie were waiting at the bus stop, 3 teenagers attacked them. After feeling this odd feeling all day and night, he gets a burst of anger, and he retaliated and got satisfaction from doing it. Jeff and Louie flee from the scene. It so happens their parents find out about it. Jeff and Louie naturally looked guilty after fleeing the scene of the crime, but in an effort to save his little brother, Louie takes the blame and is sent off to juvenile detention. Jeff later attends the birthday party, and the teenagers show up. After a fight between the teens and Jeff is left covered in bleach and alcohol, and taking the opportunity, one of them set Jeff on fire, and he later wakes up in the hospital. Once the bandages are taken off, the family is both afraid and sorry for him. The teenagers later confess it was them who attacked them and Louie is taken out of juvenile detention. Jeff's mother checks in on him in the bathroom, and when she enters the room, Jeff's appearance is morbid. He is burnt, and he cut off his eyelids so he can never sleep, and has carved his mouth in a way so that he's always smiling. Jeff proceeds to tell his mother that he is beautiful, and she should look this way too. The mother runs from the room and alerts her husband, telling him to get his gun. Jeff sees this and violently kills her and the dad. Jeff enjoys this and gets so much satisfaction from the first two that he decides to head for Louie. He enters his dark room, and Louie is horrified about what he sees. Jeff sees this and simply tells him, "Shh, go to sleep." The police showed up later. There were no survivors. SmileDog.jpg. SmileDog's story consists of an amateur writer who visits the house of an old lady. Supposedly, she had a story for him which he could use. Rather than speak, however, the woman locked herself up in her room, crying and ranting about nightmares and visions. She then appeared to have killed herself a week later. All of these center around a floppy disk she was given that contained the image smile.jpg. Viewing this image incites insanity in the minds of those who have seen it. These reports continue to happen while the victim is asleep, resulting in very vivid and disturbing nightmares. If you receive an email named Smile, it's important you pass the image on to someone else. Deleting or not viewing the mail will still result in the same hallucinations. If the mail is not sent after 3 days, this picture will deform and show a more demonic smile dog, thus resulting in even worse nightmares. Attaching the file, that is, spreading the word, is the only way to save yourself from the smile dog that appears in your dreams. Some say that the original legend began with an image of the devil. Zalgo. Zalgo is an internet legend about an ominous entity believed to cause insanity, death, and destruction of the world, similar to the creature Cthulhu, created by H.P. Lovecraft. Zalgo is an ominous creature that appears to be horror itself, or an ultimate terror all on its own. It's believed to relate to the death of the world, along with the scourge of insanity and other unspeakable things. Most of the time, disfiguration, gore, and dismemberment go along with the creature. Zalgo is often associated with scrambled text on web pages and photos of people whose eyes and mouths have been covered in black. Zalgo often cultivates into simple childish cartoons or comic strips, which corrupt them and turn them into hellish-like entities on paper with nothing but the black eyes and mouth. On forums, image boards, and certainly through emails, scrambled text began appearing with phrases like, "and he waits behind the wall." Parts of the internet become more corrupted, and soon more of its growth started spreading ominously without warning. It's known as "he waits behind the wall with 7 hands, armed only with a dead star and a lone candle." Username 666. This video shows what happens when you search for the username 666 on YouTube and then refresh the page a few times. This pasta has actually created a few rumors, one of which is that the original 666 account contained a virus that changed all the text into sixes. When you search for 666 and refresh the page a couple times, the background turns hellish, the video turns creepy, and it's just horrible. If you click on one of the videos, you won't be able to close back up, pause, or shut down your computer until the video ends. It works, but sometimes contains creepy viruses. If you're willing to take the risk of letting it into your system, that's fine, but it messes up computers bad. Just be careful, because sometimes it affects other pages too.
(1999). The year 1999 remains to be the bloody charred remnants of the destroyed childhoods of the kids of Caledon, Ontario. The channel consisted of shows such as Mr. Bear's Cellar and Booby. It mainly starred a poor, satanic, middle-aged man and the tortured kids he kept in his basement. His shows would go from average kid show affairs to actually cutting and mutilating the kids on camera. The channel was mainly a way for Mr. Bear to lure kids into his house, in order to get them to participate in satanic rituals, and eventually causing them to be sacrificed. It's rumored that he's also eaten kids as well, as seen on his show, Soup and Spoon. His age range consists of children between the ages of 4 and 16. Sadly, before the police took down his setup, he ran away. The blog is still kept to this day, but I'll leave you on one final note. It's said that he's out there, to this day, out there somewhere in the woods of Ontario, Canada, waiting to lure some poor, unsuspecting kids into a burnt-up demise.
The Russian Sleep Experiment. Russian researchers in the 1940s conducted a test on 5 people. This test was to keep these 5 subjects awake for 15 days using an experimental gas. They put the 5 in a room with enough materials to live for the next few weeks. During the first few days, the men were showing normal vitals, but after the 5th day, they began to get paranoid They ceased talking to each other and began to whisper silently to the microphones. And it just went downhill from there. The men went totally insane. One of them even died in the chamber. The other men were in terrible condition. The researchers took the men out after the 15 days and conducted different tests on them, eventually agreeing on putting them back into the chamber with 3 other researchers to study the further effects of the gas. In a swift motion, one of the researchers grabbed a gun off the commanding officer and shot him, along with one of the now 2 surviving subjects. He aimed his gun to the last surviving subject and demanded to know what he was. The test subject responded, "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be freed at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." He is then shot by the researcher, and the last words the subject says are, "So nearly free." Robert the Doll. Robert the Doll actually exists. The myths surrounding him vary, especially since it became so popular on the internet. The doll was given to an artist in the late 1800s by a servant working in his family home. The doll, which he named after himself, took on a life of its own and began to terrorize the family. It is said the owner kept his doll into adulthood, and it subsequently tormented his now late wife to insanity. When the doll was found by another family, the girl to whom it was given to was terrified of it and refused to have it in her room. The doll is currently residing in Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, still in his sailor suit, holding a little stuffed lion that he appears to be attached to. Some visitors laugh at the stupidity of being afraid of a ridiculous doll, but many change their mind when they see Robert's angry look staring right back at them. Others try to take pictures of Robert, in this case, and their cameras won't turn on. They replace the batteries, thinking that is the solution. But the new batteries are not working either. When they leave the museum, the cameras turn on and the batteries fully charged. One male visitor, who didn't believe the curse was true, videotaped his entire day at the museum. When they got to the area where Robert was, the sound of the camera turned off and couldn't be turned back on. Other employees say that when they lock up for the night, they leave peppermint candy in his case as if to bribe him to be good and not disturb anything during the night. When they return in the morning, the wrappers are left behind at Robert's feet. It's also stated that if people mock him, Robert is said to lay a curse on them, hence all the written apology letters. Be on the lookout for Tats Tops Videos Top 60 Non-Gaming Creepypastas, featuring guest narrations from Creepypasta and Mr. Creepypasta.